U.S. President Joe Biden called climate change a clear and present danger as he committed to a series of initiatives to tackle the issue. The country is experiencing a heat wave and warnings have been issued for more than a third of the population. At least 265 million people will see temperatures above 33 degrees Celsius, with millions dealing with more than 40 degrees. Mr. Biden's announcement comes just days after an influential Democratic senator quashed hopes for a sweeping legislative package of new environmental programs. The president said he will enact a series of consecutive orders.
I come here today with a message. As president, I have a responsibility to act with urgency and resolve when our nation faces clear and present dangers. And that's what climate change is about. It is literally, not figuratively, a clear and present danger. The health of our citizens and our communities is literally at stake. The UN's leading international climate scientists call the latest climate report nothing less than, quote, code red for humanity. Let me say it again. Code red for humanity. It's not a group of political officials, elected officials. These are the scientists. We see it here in America, in red states and blue states. Extreme weather events costing $145 billion. $145 billion in damages just last year. Climate change is literally an existential threat to our nation and to the world. So my message today is this. Since Congress is not acting as it should, and these guys here are, but we're not getting many Republican votes, this is an emergency, and I will look at it that way. I said last week, and I'll say it again loud and clear. As president, I'll use my executive powers to combat the climate crisis in the absence of congressional actions, notwithstanding their incredible action. In the coming days, my administration will announce the executive actions we have developed to combat this emergency. We need to act. We just take a look around. Right now, 100 million Americans are under heat alert. 100 million Americans. 90 communities across America set records for high temperatures just this year, including here in New England as we speak.
For more on this, we're joined by Arise U.S. correspondent Eric Ham, who is in Washington. Thank you for joining us, Eric. Now, President Biden said climate change is an emergency, but stopped short of a formal declaration. He announced a modest package of executive actions. Could you tell us a little bit more about them?
Yeah, that's right. In fact, we know that for over a year now, both the White House and Congress had been negotiating on a massive comprehensive package that would actually help the president meet many of his goals to reduce carbon emissions, would provide resources to companies that are actually attempting to try to reduce those carbon emissions, and would also provide tax incentives as well. Well, we saw that this was primarily being done by Democrats. And of course, right now, given how evenly divided Washington is, when West Virginia Democratic Senator Joe Manchin decided at the 11th hour to pull out of these ongoing negotiations, what that did was that left the White House scrambling to try to find something to do. And so what we saw here was the president responding to many calls for others for the White House to actually now lead with executive action. So while the president recognized that this is a pressing issue, he did not go as far as many would have hoped, but he did make clear that there will be more steps that this White House will take. We know that the first steps are going to provide more than $2 billion to actually help beef up a number of initiatives, in addition to providing resources to build wind energy plants in the Gulf of Mexico. Now, that's certainly pretty eye-popping, because we know the Gulf of Mexico is seen as a very oil-rich area. And so that is where the president is going to make this investment. In addition to that, the president made clear that while we saw just these very modest rollouts, that the administration would be doing more. And many believe that there is a small chance, albeit very, very narrow, that we could see Democratic Senator Joe Manchin actually come back to the table to focus on these issues.
Now, Mr. Biden's announcement comes just days after a Democratic senator quashed hopes for a sweeping legislative package of new environmental programs. Can you unpack this for us?
Yeah, well, what we know about West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin is that he is seen as a senator who has received enormous amounts of campaign monies from fossil fuel companies. In addition to that, we do know that he has created a number of fossil fuel companies that are now being run by his son and that he also receives benefit from. So I think what many are recognizing is that the West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin certainly has a financial stake in any deal that gets done because, again, we're talking about promoting and advancing clean energy, which actually will go against his own business and financial interests. And so many believe that is one of the reasons why we see Joe Manchin continuing to actually say one thing and do something completely different. However, given that right now, it doesn't look as though there's a deal to be made, the only hope that now many are resting on is that perhaps Democrats can actually pick up more seats in the Senate in the fall midterm elections where they will not need Joe Manchin's support in order to get something done. With that being said, we do know that many states, particularly blue states, states like California, Illinois, Massachusetts, they are engaging in aggressive actions to try to combat climate change. But right now, given where we are, particularly with the heat advisory that continues to grip the nation, many believe more needs to be done on a national scale, not just at the local level.
And Eric, as we've just heard, there are those heat warnings, and they've been issued to millions of Americans. It's a big topic now, but are voters going to remember this in the midterm elections come November?
I don't think they will. I mean, right now we're in the dog days of summer. It's July in the United States. And so it's actually not unusual to see massive heat waves taking place at this time this year. In fact, we have been seeing rising temperatures now for over a decade. And so I think this is something that has become the new normal for millions of Americans. Also, while we do know that it is becoming increasingly problematic with wildfires continuing to rage out of control, drought becoming increasingly problematic, it's not something that will be particularly one of the major drivers for voters heading into the midterm elections in November.
Eric Ham, thank you so much for joining us on Newsday.